It's that time of year. It's that time of year when everybody gets fat, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's that time of year when everyone goes off their diet, everyone goes off plan. But if you have food that tastes good, you don't have to go off plan. If you got some Piedmontese steaks, you don't need to worry about what's being cooked up for Thanksgiving or what's being cooked up for Christmas, or you don't have to involve yourself with what everybody else is doing.
Mm-hmm.
You can keep it keto or keep it keep that protein up nice and high with some Piedmontese steaks. I cooked up a big old ribeye.
Did you let it sit?
Night. I did.
That's always tough.
I was successful letting it sit, and I did a reverse sear, which I've never done before.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't figure out how to do it either because like the ribeye was gigantic, and then so I was just like, I don't know what to put it in or put it on, so I put it on like an iron what the hell are those called, cast iron pan, and I threw that in the oven, cooked it like that for probably like 20 minutes because it was massive. Somebody just told me like, oh, you only need to do like 10 minutes, but this thing was huge. So I did 20 minutes, and then when I took it out, I cooked it for about another 5 on each side, and it was just absolutely ridiculous. It was so good. Yeah. I ate the whole thing. Well, I had a little help from Daisy.
Oh, really? You gave her some?
My little doggy, she helped me with some of it. Yeah.
one bite for us would be like half her body weight. So
I know. And I saved the dog bone. I put the dog bone in the freezer because her birthday's coming up.
Oh, yeah. That'll be cool. You got to take a bunch of pictures for us.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So if you guys want to check this stuff out, like Piedmontese beef has been huge for me with this whole shred down thing. And when I noticed, the biggest like eye opener was when I calculated Piedmontese macros, and then I had, I had ground beef, and I'm like, oh, I definitely don't want that. I'd rather have this because I could have way better stuff here.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, during this month, we're actually not running a promo code with them. They are just giving everybody 25% off.
Damn.
Yeah. So if you guys want to,
they're getting serious over there.
Yeah. So if you guys want to check this stuff out, head over to Piedmontese.com. That's PIEDMONTESE.com. Everything's already 25% off. But if you guys want to support the show, use the link in the show notes right now.
You want to try to keep yourself away from some treats, then the best way to do it is to give yourself a treat that's a better option. Going with like a Quest bar, the Quest donut bar, or going with a Quest cookie. I have where we go for Thanksgiving every year. I have that house stocked up full of Quest bars and Quest cookies, and that way when I see somebody else, diving into cookies and whipping out the ice cream and desserts and stuff, I get to enjoy something too, but it's just something a little different.
Yeah, we talk a lot about like habits and stuff on this show, and it's a really cool thing. Like Andrew, I think you just said this when you're potentially dieting and you're craving something, and the first thing that comes to mind is a Quest Hero bar instead of a cookie or something else. Like that's what you want to, that's what you want to have a lot of. Yeah. Okay, go for it.
And it's more of it's not even like half and half at this point. Like it's not because like, oh, I want a healthier option. Like, no, I literally just want a hero bar because they taste that good.
Yes.
Like that's, again, I'm really focused on stuff right now with my body and my physique, but I truly do just want like a hero bar. It's it sounds silly, but yes, it is that damn good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good. And you're just trying to have habits that are a little bit better than what you had before. That's the way you're going to make progress.
Yeah. You guys seriously do need to try out these hero bars, the chips. Everything is incredible. Head over to questnutrition.com right now, and at checkout, enter promo code MarksQuest for 20% off your entire order.
And our boys over at Perfect Keto, I'm still mixing up that MCT powder oil, probably about every other day because I don't do a regular fast all the time. Sometimes I'll do a regular fast and not have the MCT oil powder. Sometimes I'll just have coffee.
Yeah.
But I've been mixing in the MCT oil powder. It gives me a little extra burst. I also mess around with the instant coffee that they have that has MCT oil powder in it as well. And I also mess with the ketones that they have. So I like that product as well.
That MCT oil powder is really good. If you can, just when you go home, grab a small little plastic bag. If you can just go into the salted scoop, just go into the salted caramel, put the scoop in the bag, and the next time we podcast,
I'll think about it. But it might be just half a scoop at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, days like today where I'm feeling a little bit more hungry because I've been fasting every single day. Days like today where I need a little extra something, I reach for the MCT oil powder, and I'm a fan of vanilla. So after this podcast, I'm actually going to mix coffee with the vanilla MCT oil powder. I don't understand it. These two guys over here understand it, but like for me, it just helps. The hunger goes away. I get a little boost of energy. I think that's probably because of the caffeine combination, but everything all about it, it's so damn good.
And nobody really likes black coffee. I think everyone just kind of thinks they do. Throw a little flavor in there. Throw a little something in there.
That's true, actually. It's better with black coffee.
Yeah.
It is better.
Yeah, it is better.
Makes it better.
Yeah, if you guys want to get better, head over to perfectketo.com/powerproject. At checkout, enter promo code powerproject for 15% off your order. You guys will not regret it. All right, what you guys got?
We got Chris Aceto on the show today. Really excited to talk to him. This guy has built a lot of world champion bodybuilders, and excited to talk to him and ask him. You know, I know he's kind of a calorie derived guy. He believes what he believes. He's also like a lot of these people that help with bodybuilding. A lot of them have like knowledge from bodybuilding, but not many of them have like gone to school and been educated the way that Chris Aceto has. So I guess it may be like a little bit like Elaine Norton in a sense, but also Chris has worked with some of the cream of the crop of bodybuilding for the last several decades. So, and then also he went out to Gold's Gym Venice and kind of lived that life for a while. And so we're really fortunate to have him on the show today.
This is going to be really fun. Like, I think when people think of IFBB pro bodybuilders, like some of the greatest ones, one thing that I kept coming across in terms of like the comments on videos were like, okay, so what was this person's protocol? And what was this person's protocol? And what was this protocol? And it wasn't like nutrition protocol or training. It was more so what was their drug protocol? And the interesting thing that I think Chris was like coming back to was like, that's the smallest thing, which is really interesting. Because even I didn't think that was like the smallest thing. Because you hear about guys going to Dubai and doing a bunch of crazy stuff to figure out what works best. Yeah. So I'm really interested to see his take on that, because these guys are massive.
Yeah, you must have to have a kind of a certain genetic profile. In talking to Jay Cutler said he was like, Chris Aceto was the guy. So Jay went to him and said like, hey, like, what do you think? And Chris was like, oh, great. Like another kid like bugging me, kind of thing. He's like, all right, I'll take a look at you. And he was like, yeah, your people are right. You do have a lot of potential. He's like, if you can follow this diet for the next couple months, it might turn into something. So, Jay Cutler being Jay Cutler, he followed the diet for like 6 months, and they saw each other again. And Chris Aceto went, holy shit. He's like, you're going to win a Mr. Olympia contest someday. And Jay Cutler was like 18 at the time or something like that. So that definitely doesn't have a lot to do with drugs. I mean, I'm sure drugs I'm sure they play a role. But percentage wise, it's probably kind of more on the outside. It's probably more of like a 5%, difference. Because if you don't have that in you you look at just all the different people that it's like, who do you know that can hold, 240, 250 pounds conditioned on stage and be a heavyweight professional bodybuilder, even with drugs being involved.
Yeah.
It's like, there's not a lot of people. A real small amount of people that you can think of that you might know, and it might not even be anybody. Because that's just look at like a Dexter Jackson, or look at a Jay Cutler, like how bubbly and round these muscle bellies are.
Yeah. Jay
Cutler being, removed from bodybuilding for several years now. He still looks jacked. He still looks big. I think he's like 250, but he looks like he's like 280 because the muscles are just so big,
Wow. He's still 250. That's crazy. A lot of those guys end up like dropping a lot of weight.
Yeah. There we go. All right.
Can you see me, hear me?
We can see you and we can hear you, and we're live. We're ready to dive in.
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, and thanks so much for kind of taking short notice. First thing I wanted to ask you is I wanted to ask you a little bit about like your thoughts on a ketogenic style diet, and also your thoughts on a lot of people are doing like a carnivore style diet. What are some of your thoughts on those styles of diets? Have you used those with anybody you work with, or are you not a fan of them? And if so, why?
I've never used them, and I think that diets are like investment advice. I think that if you ask 10 investors, give me your 10 best bets or give me your investment strategy, you're going to get 10 different answers. And the same thing is with diets, because every single person is different. Some people have an easy time getting lean. Some people don't. And there's a lot of factors in getting lean. It's outside of diet. Of course, as diet, calories count, carbs count, meal frequency counts. Outside of diet, cardio counts, how hard you train, and hard is, right? You can define hard so many different ways. A lot of people say I train hard, and do they really train hard? A lot of people say they do cardio hard. Do they really do it hard? So to answer a specific diet question, I haven't used a keto diet ever. I've used some variation of low carbs, and I think low carbs works good for people. By definition, a low carb diet or a keto diet is going to be a low calorie diet. So calories do count to a large extent. But to look for like the magic in some type of macro profile is you just, barking up the wrong tree. I think you're looking for magic.
It's really just a reduction in overall food.
Yeah, absolutely.
What have you seen in terms of cardiovascular training? Because there's kind of a lot, people go back and forth on, how much cardio somebody should do, and even if it's a worthy cause to implement quite a bit of cardio. Do you use cardio with a lot of your clients?
Ideally, in my mind, I wouldn't even say on paper. In my mind, I hate cardio because I think it's the antithesis of what you're trying to accomplish. If you look at a cardio physique, a long distance runner, their body fat could technically still be, they still obviously don't have a hard look, and they're expending a lot of calories. The distance runner, for example, or the mid distance runner. And I believe that your metabolism with cardio can slow down, just like it can. Well, it doesn't slow down, but you become efficient at doing it. The numbers lie. People like snapshot just burn 800 calories on a treadmill. They do that 4 days in a row, and technically they should be a pound lighter, right? And their physique didn't change one bit. So cardio, it's a great tool to help keep the furnace going, to help burn calories. But I think people, like everything, they take everything to excess, and they think that more is better. More is better for some people, few and far between. But I think that too much cardio, it can interfere with how hard you can train, which is not a good thing. And it can also, in some people, it's not as effective as you think. And that's why you have people, they say, I didn't look good for this show, or I didn't look good for this, and I was doing, hour in the morning and 30 minutes at night. Could just be overkill. Ultimately, you're trying to find out, how much your own personal body can withstand. And I think that's, variable from person to person too, because we all know people did 2 hours of cardio and just got crazy ripped. And for them, it seems like they could do the cardio and their body didn't become efficient at doing it. In other words, you get on the cardio machine, you do an hour, and it says you burnt 700, and they did burn 700. Whereas some people, over time, your body adapts to cardio exercise by being able to do it, but burning less energy doing it.
Would you maybe recommend some amount of cardio to somebody who really struggles with the diet side of things? Maybe you have a client.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, maybe you have a client that just struggles to like really adhere to the diet strictly.
Well, I have everyone do cardio. I just, trying to find a sweet spot where I'm not having them do too much. And so I think cardio is, definitely helps you get leaner. But in terms of, there's a fine line between, how much is effective and how much is just too much. But everyone, I generally have everyone I help do cardio for sure.
As far as like the nutrition, I guess, goes for the bodybuilders you work with, is there a general thing you end up going for? Because you mentioned like you've been an advocate of low carbohydrate for the longest time, but I guess like, do you also help them in the off season when they're bulking? And is there do you have a different type of approach when you go with them in terms of the bulk versus, when they're cutting?
Yeah, I mean, if they're trying, I don't follow too many people in the off season.
Okay.
Because ultimately, it's the fine tuning is the fine tuning, right? Getting ready for a show. But off season sort of mostly boils down to eating more than calories than you need, eating enough protein to grow, training hard, and ultimately everyone gets fat anyway, right?
Yeah.
So what are you monitoring other than their body weight going up, or them looking bigger? But in terms of monitoring them, ultimately you'd be monitoring them and saying, oh yeah, you're getting bigger, 110 kilograms, 112, 114, 115.
Mm-hmm.
Each increment up, each kilogram up or every 2 pounds up, they're probably, bigger, but they're probably softer along the way too. So, I don't follow too many people in the off season.
Got it.
It's mostly like bringing it down, trying to reverse everything and trying to get lean without, falling apart, or get lean without shrinking.
Okay.
What are some of the extremes that you've seen with how people respond to food differently? You had somebody like a Jay Cutler who was, shoveling down about 1,000 carbs a day, and you might have somebody else on a 25 grams of carbs per day protocol. What are some of the extremes that you've seen over the years?
I've just seen someone I'm working with now. I just realized last night, he's a huge bodybuilder, and I, literally driving from one place to another, I realized you're going to have to starve him, because you're trying to do things methodical, and you're trying to do things to not slow their metabolism down. And the week is ticking by, and the next week is ticking by, and he's following things, but he's not getting leaner. And yet I'm driving, gosh, this classic guy I just had win a show was eating more than him,
Wow.
And so I'm struggling with it to some degree in my mind. And then I just realized, you just got to drop the nuclear bomb at some point and say, maybe he's got to go into full ketosis. Maybe,
Yeah.
that's it brings you full circle. Maybe you got to force it off. Maybe you got to, in this case, you got to just drag it down with low calories, low carbs. The opposite of what you should be doing, right? To kill the metabolism, but you got to get the fat off. And to answer your question, different extremes, that would be an extreme, because you would think, and I hear that from other people who prep people. They say, Christian, I'm working with this guy. He's really big. It seems like people who get a lot of muscle, the metabolism is not as fast as you think. It's like, wow, their weight got all the way up there on that calorie level. In other words, they didn't eat tons and tons to get up there, but they grew. And even though they didn't get that fat, to get lean, sometimes they have to just hammer it down on the other end. Which you would think, oh, they got all that muscle, right? They got all that muscle. They can eat a lot on the diet. So that's an extreme, as opposed to, let's say, the flip end, Jay eating 1,000 carbs.
What do you think about intermittent fasting? Is that something that you ever use with people?
I've not used it. It just comes up all the time. People ask me everywhere all the time about it. I think it's probably a effective way to lose weight because it's a variable low-cal diet. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, it ensures people are strict for some period of time, very strict, obviously. And then, but that strictness is broken up by, the period where you're eating. So, there's got to be something to it because most people who ask me, I'll say why, and they say, oh, because I'm doing it and it's really worked for me. Whereas other things people ask me about and I'll say why, and they say, no, I'm just curious, I tried it and it didn't work. So
Right.
of all the little like weird strategies or just odd strategies in the last 10 years or so, that's one that's come up. People ask me and they tell me that, you know, it worked for them.
You think in terms of standard bodybuilding, though, it may make more sense to consistently and constantly feed the body and feed the muscles?
Yeah, I think it still boils down to, you know, the 6 meals a day, 5 or 6 meals a day. You know, the consistency of having some type of low blood sugar, but still stable low blood sugar. So carbs are moderate, low. So you can still be in like a fat burning zone because your calories are low and because your carbs are not too high, your insulin levels are not too high. So ideally you could be burning constant protein intake so that, you know, you have a continual intake or influx of amino acids so that because you're on low calorie, you don't go into a, you know, burning off muscle stage. So, you know, I think it's tried and true. You know what I mean? You know, it's been around for so long, and you know, so many people have good results with it. It's hard to fight with.
How about like the actual food that you have your bodybuilders focus on eating? Because I heard Jay mention that like when he was working with you back in the day, like he would just have numbers that you would tell him to have. And he could like eat a donut or something, but he wouldn't. He would make sure he stuck to eating certain foods. Do you still?
Yeah, well, I mean, I prescribe for people like exact.
Mm-hmm.
But like when you're eating, and that's, you know, 1 in a million. Jay was eating and growing and getting lean at the same time on 1,000 carbs. And I mean, when he was doing that, people didn't believe it, and he didn't even tell them he was doing it because he didn't want to have to try to explain it, or he didn't want to have to try to say like, but you can't. I can, but you can't.
Yeah.
But you know, if you're eating 1,000 carbs, I mean, I would give them the numbers because does it really matter? I mean, it's so bizarre anyway, right? 1,000. So it's like 6 meals, you know, 150 a meal. So it's like 3 cups of rice. Does it really matter if you go 3 cups of rice, 3 cups of rice, 3 cups of rice, 3 cups of rice, 1 cup of rice, a donut and a bagel? You know, there's what, 5 grams of fat in the donut, you know, because the opposite of that with those big numbers, you know, such huge numbers is that it's irrelevant, you know, as opposed to somebody who's eating 100 carbs and they have 1 donut and 50 carbs from rice. You know, then you're taking half your carbs from sugary carbs. And if you're eating 100 carbs, you have a hard time getting lean anyway.
Yeah.
So with Jay, I would just throw out the numbers and say, you know, 150, 150, 150, 150. And, you know, it worked.
When it comes to having that amount of carbohydrates, what would you do with the fats? You know, if you have somebody who is doing well with carbs, you know, where do the fats end up going?
I still follow a pretty low fat diet, you know, and, you know, for contest prep, for example, and I feel like really, really low fat leans you down even faster, but a lot of people who go really, really low fat, they get thinner looking, stringier looking, you know what I mean? Like they don't have the density. So I think in the last maybe 10 years or so, I probably moved away from like super low fat to like lower fat. If somebody has a hard time getting lean, I may, you know, drag their fat down. One of the reasons I just like eliminate the fat on them if they have a hard time getting lean is because when you're eating like no fat, you just starve all the time. You know what I mean? You're just like, God, I'm not eating anything. And I'm still a big believer, like if you feel like you're starving, you're probably burning fat. You know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I mean, I don't do anything active hardly. I sit at a desk all day long and I don't eat anything and I'm never hungry. You know what I mean? So it doesn't add up. So the opposite is if you're starving, you probably, you know, there's probably indication that, right, that there's a demand there. So sometimes when you go like, you know, fish and egg whites, it's like eating lettuce. You know what I mean? Even though if you're eating like rice or a potato with it, you're just starving all the time. And sometimes when people say I'm starving, I say, okay, that's a good sign to some degree. If you're trying to get lean, it's just a terrible feeling to starve.
Yeah. I guess I'm curious about this then, because you've been doing this for a long time, and there were probably bodybuilders that are like, okay, is there a way to mitigate this feeling of starvation? Like you're saying, feeling like you're starving is a good thing, but there are probably some guys who are just like, how can I make this easier? As much as like maybe that shouldn't be the question, it's supposed to be hard.
Yeah.
Are there any tactics that help guys get through this successfully, but I guess not feel as shitty?
Yeah, well, you can eat tons of vegetables. I've had people like throw up almost on, I eat too much lettuce, or sugar-free Jell-O and get sick from that. Or, there's some supplements I think that can, make you feel less starving. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
But there's not too many ways around it. That starving feeling.
Yeah.
It's funny that we're talking about starving because it goes back to the guy who I was like, God, this guy can't get lean. I'm going to have to starve him. And today was like the first day, so I'm really hungry. It's like, gosh, thank goodness. And I forgot about going low fat. He's not like super low fat, dietary fat. So maybe that's the next step. Starve him down by, creating no fullness in the stomach.
This poor guy's going to end up with no food just from this podcast. Yeah, it is a tough thing to deal with. Something that's helped me mitigate, how hungry I get, because I used to be 330 pounds in my pursuit for powerlifting, and just exercising. As shitty as that sounds, to try to tell someone who's trying to lose weight, it's like, hey, go exercise. Do you ever do that with your people that you contest prep? Do they work out multiple times a day sometimes?
I think if people train, sometimes training twice a day can lean you down faster than training once. If you can train hard twice and not overtrain, that's the trick. And exercising will of course change your brain chemistry. So you're stimulating like endorphins that shut digestion down. So you know what I mean? But sometimes when you're starving, you feel like, God, my stomach's digesting itself. So I'm so hungry. And if you exercise, and that's why when people say, like, if I drink coffee, coffee kind of changes and, releases a little bit of endorphins, or like ephedra products release endorphins, or training, of course, so that would work. But getting lean is not easy. And that's why, I respect the people I work with, because I may be telling them what to do, but I'm not doing the work. They're the ones, they're starving. As you know, if you came from 330 down, right, there's a lot of, and you're lean, there's going to be a lot of times where you just, it's not easy. It's always a mental battle.
I've noticed what you're talking about. I've noticed that when I felt hungry, I felt like I was burning fat. I really did. It felt that way. And, as I was coming down, I was also, every once in a while, I would make the mistake because I got so used to it. I was like, oh, well, hungry, being hungry and being like, quote unquote, starving is working great for me. So I'll just starve a little bit more. And then I got kind of like you were talking about, kind of got stringy. And then I was like, well, that's not really, the look I'm going for. So it got to be hard to manage, but protein can be very satiating, and diving into like 2 chicken breasts or something, as unappetizing as it is, that can help you get past being super hungry sometimes.
Yeah, protein is generally, as opposed to carbohydrates, is an appetite stimulator, and protein's to some degree, a large neutralizer. So, it goes back to like lower carbs or even keto diet. People may like a keto diet because sometimes they're going to be less hungry than a diet that's not keto. High protein will always make you less hungry than what they call, like when you study nutrition, a chow diet. Chow diet's like a high fat, high sugar diet, and it's what they feed the rats to make them eat more and more and more and more, just to study what to eat. They don't give them protein because they'd eat nothing.
That's like me. I think I'm like a rat. And that's why I try to shy away from carbohydrates a little bit more, because if I do eat them, it just stimulates something in me. Like I just want to eat more and more. And next thing I know, my sweet potato has turned into Ben and Jerry's somehow.
Ugh. It's funny how people don't have appetites too. I hear that all the time. I don't have an appetite, and they're training to, to get big. It's like, I don't have an appetite. So
Yeah, I've never had an issue with that.
To get big, you have to have an appetite, and to get ripped, you have to, let your mind override your appetite.
Does anything help stimulate appetite? You did mention carbohydrate. Have you seen anything else be effective to help some people bulk up, whether it be a drug or a supplement or food?
Back in the day, I don't even know if it's around. People used to use periactin to and there's some. I know there's some which I've never used, never told anyone to use, but I know for sure there's a appetite like a. What's not a SARM, but a
Andrew.
Appetite stimulant. What is it? It's like, one of those things, GHP6 something.
Oh, yeah, growth hormone, yeah.
MK677 ibutamorin.
There you go. The chemist.
That's right.
Experimentalist.
Right? And does it work?
Absolutely. I am one of those persons that didn't really have a huge appetite, and I experimented with MK677, and
that's it, MK677.
Yeah, and it definitely helps. It doesn't help, in my opinion, as much as like the message boards and forums will say. I think a lot of that is mental, because they're taking something that's supposed to make you hungry and raise your ghrelin levels, so they take it and they're like, oh my god, I'm ravenously hungry. And when I took it, the biggest sign for me that it wasn't as powerful is I accidentally like double dosed myself. And it was awesome, smart, bad move. But I did that, and then I realized like, wait, I'm not any hungrier than I was the day before. I'm like, okay, so like maybe it's more mental, but it absolutely does help, because I would go from kind of dreading the next meal to like kind of being pumped up and excited, like, dude, like I'm actually going to enjoy this now.
Yeah.
I'm curious about this too. As far as, because you always hear bodybuilders of the last generation say guys don't work out as hard. And I want to know your take on that. But do you think the way that a lot of bodybuilders look at nutrition now is not as disciplined, or is not as good as the prior generations look at nutrition? Is there anything different in that sense?
Well, I think that I think when it comes to the training part, I think that defaulting to machines has played a big role in there is a difference between doing bent over rows and hammer strength rows. I don't know why people do hammer strength anything. People do barbells and dumbbells. I don't know why bodybuilders would use machines other than just the epitome of laziness. I mean that.
Okay.
If I wasn't so lazy and hate training so much, I've always had this idea of like wanting to do a before and after picture of myself with only using a bar. So I figured I could do squats, I could do front squats, I could do bent over rows, I could do shoulder press, bench press, incline bench press, just a bar.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I could do squats, you could come up with a million ways to use a bar. And so I think the way your body responds to machines versus free weights is different. So it's weird to me when I see, I don't go to gyms a lot, but if I'm helping someone, I say, hey, I'm in town, I'll go to the gym, see, and it's all machines. It's like, gosh, that's strange. Yeah. And then, so there might be some truth to that, and then with the diet, Jay said something to me one day, said, these guys don't even cook their food. And I'm like, what do you mean they don't cook their food? He said, it's all delivered. So this weird, like Jake cooked, like I kid Eduardo Correa that I've been helping for maybe 11 years. And he's eaten 6 to 7 meals a day, every day. He's never eaten 5 ever since the day I met him. So when he was at the New York Pro this year, I said, I calculated, I said, this is like the 23,000th meal I've seen. And he's never eaten a packaged meal ever. He's eaten a restaurant meal. or he's eaten out before, but not often. But it's all cook. So, I mean, that's just an interesting Jayism on where people, nutritionists, he was making the point, I think, that, Chris, I control what I eat. You know what I mean? It's that important to me. I want to see it to go. I want to weigh it. I want to put it in the pan. I want to cook it. I want to weigh the rice or measure the rice or the potato. I'm going to eat it.
Mm-hmm.
And the next meal. Whereas now it's like, pick up your phone and have some, company deliver the 6 meals for you a day.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's just it's different.
I think
I struggle more with the training. I struggle more with the machines than I do with nutrition.
I think inconvenience can make you a champion. Like Jake Cutler used to drive several hours to go see you, just to pose in front of you, and then head back in his Jeep, right, and freeze his ass off.
Yeah. Everything's hard work, and you're right. He would do that, and he would. He was committed. He was all in. That's the thing about Jay is, I mean, anyone who's, rises to that level. But you've interviewed Jay, so he's a different breed.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on SARMs, since we talked about him for a second there?
I don't know much about him, honestly. I know people laugh when they hear that because they think that I'm, it's okay. Chris preps people. He's like a chemist. I don't know much about him. And even if I did, I would say, well, Arnold was using Test and Primo, and other Mr. Olympias were using the same thing.
Right.
In terms of, what's tried and true, I think those things will crowd out the idea that SARMs is something special.
Peptides.
Put it this way. Would you rather prepare for a bodybuilding contest on Test and Primo or SARMs?
Right.
And every single person, without even, would say, okay, I'll go with what people have been using for 30 years, as opposed to. So that's how you know which one's better.
I want to know about this too. Then, when you like look online and you look at YouTube a lot now, you see a lot of like YouTubers talking about, oh, this is my steroid stack, and they have like literally just, I don't know, just a crazy amount of stuff that they're taking, and they look variably average, not even really that great, right? So people look at that and then they're like, wow, if this guy is taking all this stuff, and you got like, look at these Mr. Olympia dudes, they must be on so many more things. But then I've heard conversations where they're talking and they're like, I really don't take that much stuff, and even their coach is like, hey, it doesn't take that much. So what is the difference there? Like, why? Genetics. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's genetics, and the guy, the YouTuber who's 105 pounds and taking that list of products, he can quadruple it and he's still not going to be even, top 10 if he has crappy genetics in the National Bodybuilding Championships. I might be exaggerating, but to make a point. Whereas, I mean, there is this idea that there's versus somebody with great genetics, they're taking 1/5 of what this guy's doing and they're getting 500 times better results. Is it because of his diet or in his training? Could be, but it's probably mostly genetics. I mean, people ask me all the time, I want to be Mr. Olympia. I tell them, you're not going to be Mr. Olympia. You know what I mean? And they're pros. I said, you're not going to be Mr. Olympia.
Yeah.
There's only a few people genetically who have the structure, the fullness, the shape, who can win. You're more like a second tier pro. Why? Because of genetics. And then, inevitably the conversation may circle around to, well, what if I wanted to push the envelope? I said, you push the envelope and still be second tier. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You can't tell me Dexter Jackson competing for 30 years is like not genetically blessed to the yin yang. You know what I mean? I mean, I still would, and for someone to think, well, I would like to, like, use what Dexter uses. You can. You probably, it's not rocket science. I'm sure he's, using the basics and less than you think. Otherwise, he wouldn't have the longevity that he has.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get somebody from good to great? I mean, all things being equal, I assume that everyone steps on the Olympia stage is using similar tactics, but you took Sean Roden, I think, from like last place in the Mr. Olympia to first. Like, how does transition like that happen?
It starts with a vision. It starts with a vision. If you have the genetics, you have to have a vision first. I felt like when I was working with Jay, he can tell you, I told him from like a kid, you're going to be Mr. Olympia.
Yeah, he said he was 18 or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I pounded that into his head. Why? Because I believed it. I'm certainly sure he didn't believe it. But as he was going and started seeing some like crazy changes, got tremendous genetics, goes back to genetics again, and then having people like, when you're an amateur, flex wheeler come up to say, you're going to be something in the sport. You know what I mean? You start to internalize what people have been telling you. And if you never internalize that vision, you'll never be Mr. Olympia. You have to internalize the idea that you're going to win that show. And you have to obsess about it. And you have to every day be uncomfortable knowing that you're not Mr. Olympia yet, so that you can be, so that can get under your skin and drive you there. And the irony of that is that, when Sean met Jay sat him down. Sean will tell you that story, or Jay will tell you the story. Is Jay told Sean, spent maybe a couple hours with him one night, like 3 a.m. in Germany at an airport or a cafe or something. And Sean said, I want to be Mr. Olympia. He hadn't placed top 10. He was 11th at his first Olympia. And Jay set the vision for him that then you have to internalize the idea that I'm good enough to be Mr. Olympia, but just internalizing it, you got to act on it at the same time. So obviously you need the genetics. Obviously you need to know how to do it. You have to know how to do the training for your body. You have to know how to do the diet for your body. But ultimately bodybuilding is, or not ultimately, but a lot of success in anything comes down to mindset. And if you have to have the Mr. Olympia mindset. And that mindset is all encompassing. Do you think really Elon Musk has any life whatsoever outside of stressing about Tesla, if the stock's going to go from 290 to 210 today, or if he's going to deliver for Wall Street, 293,000 trucks? Because if he delivers 200,000, his stock's going to tank. Does he really have any relationships other than that company? The answer is no, he doesn't. And that's the mindset to making this dream of building electric cars and laying it all on the line, almost going bankrupt, and trying to make gas-using cars obsolete. It's that mindset that you need in everything to be like the best, and that's what you need to be Mr. Olympia. So that's why I respect every person who's won the Mr. Olympia title, because they're all genetics. Come on, Coleman's genetics. Dorian, I trained hard. It's genetics. Sean, genetics. Phil, perhaps the genetics. Meaning they all have what it takes, but still to get to that level and stay at that level is, it's a vision and it's mental toughness.
When you were talking about, you mentioned Coleman, right? When you were working with Jay and Coleman was just winning one after the other, you were talking about having a belief that you're Mr. Olympia. Was there ever a time where they were just like, how can we beat this monster of a human? Or was
No,
it just consistent belief?
No, it was consistent belief, and because people forget that Jay beat him in 01.
Mm.
I mean, he didn't beat him to 06. They didn't hand him the title to 06. But I mean, Coleman, right? 98 wins, 99 wins, 2000 wins. So at this point, he's got 3 wins. That's not a lot. I mean, it's a lot, but he's got 3, and he's indestructible. And all through those wins, I kept on telling Jay, it doesn't matter. You're still going to get this guy. You're still going to beat Ronnie. And I think it was in 2000 on the tour after the Olympia. Jay competed with Coleman and got second to him. And I personally felt at least one of those shows, Jay could have won, but it was the idea of like Ron Coleman, Jay Cutler.
Yeah.
Judge's perspective is still like, whoa, Ronnie, Mr. Olympia, 3 times, Jay Cutler. But I was backstage at one show, and I said, I had a disposable Kodak camera, and I said, Jay, take this picture with Coleman. And I took it. I have it still. And he said, why'd you take that picture? And I said, because I just wanted to document it for you that this was the last time Ronnie would beat you. And Jay just ran with that. He said, that's it. He had already won, let's see, he took the whole year off and got ready for the 01 Olympia. And that was the first time the Olympia was 2 days, unfortunately. But the prejudging went down and looked to be like Jay won. And if you look at judges' scores, Jay only got 1 second place vote in prejudging. He had all first place votes at that show. So, I mean, he had already taken him down quick. People forget, but he had already beaten him early in the career. It's just that what happened, Coleman went the next year, up another level. And then, it took Jay to 2006 to beat him.
Mm.
How much do you have to cultivate this championship mindset with some of the guys? Does some of them have it kind of already, or do you have to? I mean, that must be a big part of your coaching, because it's going to come down to like the calories, and it's going to come down to training and drugs and genetics and a lot of things. But this mindset must be something that you must communicate a lot to these athletes, right?
Well, I push people a lot, and as much as I don't push like the championship mindset, I always remind people like, this guy's really beatable. He's not as good as people think. He's not as good as I think. I always try to put that into people's heads who I might be helping, who, if they're trying to win 212 Olympia. I always told Eduardo Correa, you can win the show. I always told Jose Raymond, you could win the show. They've been second. They haven't beaten Flex. But they've come close, Certainly, Jose came very close in 15, and 2014, Eduardo Correa came close. So I think those two people have it anyway. You know what I mean? They have that mental mindset. But, a lot of people you work with too, they're inexperienced, they're young. So it takes, you can't just read it and believe it, or you can't just hear it and believe it. It takes time. You know what I mean? You got to, and a lot of that mindset, of course, is created by how you respond, not react, but respond to losses. Some people respond to losses like, okay, they take it, it's a loss, it's disappointing, they regroup, they see if they can learn something from it and they move forward. Other people's it's like it's the end of the world. And the people who take a loss as it's the end of the world, they're never going to make it to the top. And the irony is, right, Coleman started in 15th place at the Olympia, and Jay started in 15th place in the Olympia. And Roden started out of the top 10. You know what I mean? It's funny that those guys rose to the top, because if you had asked when they got 15th, do you think Warren Coleman's going to win the Olympia? People would be like, no, he's 15th. Do you think Jay Cutler? No, he's 15th. Do you think Roden? No, he can't even break top 10. So it's interesting that those people obviously learn something from those losses. And so you can tell someone, or they can read it in a book, but I think, you kind of sort of have to have it. You know what I mean? You got to have that mentality, and you probably learned it outside of something before you got to bodybuilding. You know, I know Jay learned it from working for his family in construction. You know, they just ground him into the grind. You know, they made him grind every day working when he was a little kid. So, I mean, he had the work ethic. It was just, you know, taking the work ethic and parlaying it into something else.
Do you have to be careful and maybe sometimes reserved with maybe the first thing that comes to your mind when you are seeing pictures from some of the athletes? Like if they're, let's say someone's a few weeks behind, you know, or they're a little off track, you think, you know, are you able to like jump down their throat and say something to them, or do you have to have a more soft approach to it, or does it just depend on the athlete?
No, I think most people know, like, when they're not in shape. I just sometimes remind them, you do know, you look terrible. Right? Just so there's no disconnect.
You have to be you have to be pretty blunt, though.
Yeah, just so we're on the same page. You do know that you look terrible. People like, yeah, but I'm ready to get going.
Right.
I think bodybuilding is such a interesting sport in the way that, like you mentioned, Ronnie and Jay were 15th in their first Olympia. It's, I guess, the climb to getting to first seems so crazy, especially when you've placed 15th. When you mention all that belief you need to have, it's like you have to get better as you get older, and it's such a long process. Has there been anyone, like, I don't remember or know, but has there been anyone who just came in and splashed rather immediately, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, look at Lee Haney, went from, I think, 5th or 4th to 1st, no, 3rd to 1st. So he made a third to 1st. Dorian 2nd to 1st. You know, their first Olympias. Of course, Phil was like 5th to like 2nd to 1st. So it says as much about the people like Coleman, Jay, and Roden, you know, about their drive than it does anything else. Or it says something about Haney, Dorian's, and Phil's phenomenal, either genetics / luck / hard work to be able to, like, oh, I'm here. I'm winning right away.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think we'll see that. For some reason, I don't think that, I mean, I don't think we're going to see that much anymore. It's weird that those odd occasions people were able to like jump in. Or even Levrone, I mean, he won the USA or the Nationals, and he was 2nd in his first Olympia. I mean, it's crazy. I was an amateur last year. I won the Nationals, and now I'm 2nd in the Mr. Olympia.
Why don't you think we're going to, like, see that much?
Because there's other avenues to compete in. Like, people like, okay, I'm doing classic and I like that, or I'm doing men's physique and I like that. There's options for people, as opposed to that was it. There was just bodybuilding.
Has anything changed about getting in shape since you were competing?
I don't think anything's really changed. Just expectations have changed on what people's levels of. It's weird, right? I mean, you always hear like people like, oh, the condition is terrible now compared to like 10 years ago. Yes and no. It's funny. You didn't need glutes and hams 14 years ago, and now they're prerequisite. You won't even get looked at if you don't have glutes and hams. And yet you can have glutes and hams that have no other, you can have just average condition everywhere else, so you place high because you got glutes and hams.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just a weird observation that that people don't consider you to be in shape if you don't have glutes and hams. And, you know, people go nuts over the guy with the greatest glutes and hams. I mean, Sean Roden essentially had the best glutes and hams when he won.
Right.
I mean, you could argue that the show came down to glutes and hams. He out gluten hammed everyone.
It's funny though, because in natural bodybuilding, that's the same type of thing, but it's more so glutes. Like, if you don't have glutes, you're not in shape. That's what they say.
Striated glutes.
The striated glutes is what you need.
It's like you can't have a nice house without granite countertop kitchens and stainless steel appliances. They're like, oh, yeah, did you see the rest of the house? Yeah, but it doesn't have granite.
There's no glue.
It doesn't have granite and you have white refrigerator and a white microwave oven. It's not stainless steel.
Aside from like the expectations, the way that you got in shape, because we got some pictures of you here, and I've seen some stuff from back in the day when you were at like Gold's Gym Venice and stuff like that. Has any of the it's still like chicken and rice pretty much, right? I mean, that's you were talking about a moderate to low fat diet, right?
It'd be like saying, is there a new way to embezzle money at a company? They've been embezzling in it. Like when you find out the bookkeepers, they've been cooking the books the same way they've been cooking them for 200 years.
It's a formula, right?
Yeah, it's a formula. It's a formula based on energy control. I'd like to say calorie control, energy, calorie control, energy expenditure. But not much has changed, not really. I don't think a lot has changed. I mean, I got a book I wrote in 1995 on bodybuilding, and I just went to China and I said, oh God, I got to do a seminar. I hate seminars. I take the book on the plane and skim through it, and I'm like, okay, same stuff I'm doing now.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's changed.
Yeah. It's interesting when you mentioned, at least for the exercise aspect of bodybuilding, how you don't like machines that much, because like it's so funny seeing like so many bodybuilders are like preach that machines are the way to go if you want to isolate certain muscle groups, hamstrings.
I think it's the worst.
It's so that's pretty awesome.
And I'll stake everything I know on it. I will. I think they don't. I don't want to isolate a muscle. I don't know if I want to isolate a muscle. I don't think I want to train chest and only feel my pecs. I think it's okay to feel your shoulders and triceps. Maybe it's such a damn heavy weight that they have to come into play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe you're going to hurt yourself otherwise, right?
Yeah. I don't care if I squat and I feel it in my glutes and hams too, as well as my quads. I don't know if I want to just throw that away and just use some machine that I go up and down, up and down, up and down. I can only feel my quads. I don't know if it's enough stress on the quads, or just, I don't see anyone's legs better than Tom Platz anymore. I don't see anyone's back or up. I'll put Tom Platz's legs against anyone's legs. He didn't do hammer strength. And I will put Samir Benoot's back double bicep from 83 against his will blast Roden and Curry's back away. Right?
Yeah.
You put the pictures up side by side. You think he did those machines? Phil, of course, is a different, he's got a great back double. Samir would say I'd beat him too, but you know what I mean? They used free weights.
Something I've always said from a powerlifting perspective is I always thought the assistance exercises, the only real importance of the supplemental exercises were the fact that they weren't barbell exercises. So it was more of a distraction away from continuing onward with the barbell movement to almost hurt yourself. It's just, so that's
distraction, that total distraction.
Yeah. That's all. That's all I ever felt that they were. I didn't feel like they were exponentially helping you any further. I actually just felt like it just gave you the illusion that you were doing more work. And it was also maybe preventing you from overuse of using the barbell.
It's funny that you say feel, because I asked someone today, sometimes feeling will tell you what's going on. And I asked someone today, he said, do I look leaner? I said, no. He said, I asked him, do you feel leaner? I said, yeah, I feel leaner. I said, okay, you're probably leaner then. I can't see it from 2 days ago or 3 days ago. But maybe my eyes aren't as good as, maybe the distinction is that small right now. But if you feel leaner, maybe you are. It's a difference. If you feel leaner, no, I feel softer. Then holy smokes, then you don't look any better. And I think you're telling me you feel softer. So, if you feel like those exercises are just a waste of time, maybe they are a waste of time.
Have you ever had to talk someone off the ledge, off of them saying that they feel fat or they feel flat and they want to abandon doing the show?
I tell people all the time. I've had people quit on me 10 days out and win shows. I've had people want to pull out of a show 3 days out and not win the show, but place extremely high in a very important show. Yeah.
Have you ever took a
step? Fall apart at the end.
You ever
people
took
fall apart mentally at the end, and that's why I always tell people, one thing I think, go back to mentality is, even people in the Olympia, whether I help them or don't help them, they're on the edge. They're out of their minds. They don't know where they are the last 10 days. Like, am I good enough? That's what they're thinking 24 hours a day. Am I good enough? Am I tight enough? Am I better than last year? Am I going to be better than this guy? Most people, it's funny. I will tell you this. Sean Roden, 10 days out, have complete, utter, no stress whatsoever or any thoughts about any other competitor. Same thing for Jay Cutler. I mean, they won Olympias. And I'm sure Coleman would be the same way, and Heath would be the same way. You know what I mean? It's you can't get caught up in things that you can't control.
Yeah.
You ever recognize how ridiculous it is, the profession that you're in? Where somebody's somebody's holding on to like this little microscopic amount of fat, and they're like, "Dude, like I'm too fat, I can't do the show," or my glutes aren't striated enough. I don't think I'm gonna win. You're like, "Oh my God, this is kind of weird."
Yeah. I mean, it's a show of extremes, right? It's a pageantry of extremes, and I mean, people, right? They keep themselves up all night long worrying about their condition for the last 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Have you ever had to just tell a client like, "Hey, you need to just go home and sleep"?
Because of them being tired, or because of them being stressed out, or?
Well, so I'm currently trying to shred down and obtain abs for the first time in my entire life. I'm being coached by Mark and Nsima, and one day I just came in and I'm like, man, I don't know, guys, like I'm feeling extremely flat. And Mark said something kind of similar to what you just said. He's like, dude, if we took a picture of you 2 days ago and then we took a picture of you today, you would look the exact same. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't feel like I'm looking too good. And then Nsima was like, well, what's your sleep been like? I'm like, well, it's always a struggle, but I probably should, maybe get a couple more hours. And he's like, yes, you need to sleep right now. And so I went and got a couple nights of good rest, and I woke up on like the third day, and I'm just like, oh shit, that guy knows what he's talking about.
Ready to go again.
Yeah. I had, not only mentally was I like more in a positive mind state, but like I felt like when I looked in the mirror, I'm like, there we go. Like we're back on track, guys. Like, let's keep going. So I was just curious if at that level, like, I know everybody is, I mean, they have so much experience, but does that still slip up to where you're like, hey guys, like sleep is like the other thing that you guys need to be tracking, or, it's just as important as X, Y, and Z?
Well, I don't participate, to answer that, I don't participate a lot in people's training stuff, right? I micromanage their diet.
Got it.
And when I don't need to micromanage, I just let the diet run on its own. But I'll tell people, I'll insert myself at key times, I think, and tell people you are overtraining, and I won't tell them to go sleep, but I say, you can't train tomorrow or the next day. It's going to be 1,000% waste of your time, and you're going to go backwards rather than forwards. Mm-hmm. So I think that falls under the category of rest, sleep or / overtraining. You got to push your body to the limit, whether you're trying to do the Long Island amateur show or the Mr. Olympia. You got to push your body to the limit to, break personal barriers. But at the same time, you do have limits. And that's why I hate when people say no limits. I say, no. Every time I hear someone say no limits, I say there's tons of limits.
Yeah.
And you should observe limits. But you have to know when you're pushing your body too much, because when you push your body too much, nothing happens or nothing good happens. So, rest and knowing when to take days off from training. And people laugh at me, with me, because who I help, because I'm notorious for like, I can't take a day off. I'm 10 days out. And I say, I want you to take today off and tomorrow off, because, 10 days is a long time when you're straggling, and you're at the tip of the mountain. Just because you're at the top of the mountain, you can stay at the top, or you can slide back quickly. If you're not well rested or you're too far overtrained.
Yeah, and if we're able to separate bodybuilding from PEDs, and then so maybe I guess that can fit in its own like level as far as how deep someone can be into bodybuilding. In your opinion, is bodybuilding healthy?
I would say bodybuilding is very healthy. I think weight training is incredibly healthy. I think it's healthier than, by far more healthy than cardiovascular exercise. Weight one versus the other. Weight training smokes cardiovascular exercise.
Yeah, it does. How about this? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was curious about when you hear a lot about peak weeks of a lot of bodybuilders. A lot of bodybuilders do some wild stuff on peak week. That's just,
I call them disaster weeks.
Yeah. Like when you're dealing with, I guess, like Roden, Cutler, etc. Do you keep it simple, or are there any is there anything that you bring out of left field to, I guess, bring anything more out of their physiques?
No, I just don't want people coming into the show. Peak week for me is, don't let people go into the show holding water. So, I mean, you can, and you know what? The perfect peak on paper works until it doesn't work in real life. And people write these extravagant peaking processes down, and they're going to manipulate one thing, two things, three things, or five things. And it looks great on paper, but it might not work at all, in real life. So if you end up on stage holding water, you just torpedoed 16 weeks or 12 weeks or 18 or 40 weeks of dieting down the drain. The flip side is, look at Rolly last year and Remy the year before. They were the two biggest guys on stage and two most waterlogged guys there are. So other than thinking, don't be stupid and let this guy go on stage holding water. The flip side to that is, don't let him go on stage being too flat too.
Yeah.
But if I had the choice, I'd rather see someone on stage a little flat and tight than holding a little bit too much water and not tight enough.
Are there any concepts in terms of ways that you go about getting drying athletes out?
Yeah, I'll try to deplete them. But I'm trying to think all the way through the process. How really does this guy respond to low carbs and depleting? Because when you deplete someone, you run the risk of destroying all that prep by bringing them in too flat. In other words, how many people have you heard about or seen? You see it. You just go to contests, you eating people like maniacs Thursday, Friday. Everyone who's eating like maniacs Thursday, Friday probably depleted a little bit too long or too hard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they're in the panic mode trying to refill back up. Could be. So I'm always aware of how running into a couple weeks out, how sensitive they are to falling apart when their carbs go low. Some people, you can keep their carbs low and they're fine. They don't shrink that bad. They don't go too flat. So if that's the case, then I think I would have the confidence to deplete them fairly hard. But if they fall apart, then I wouldn't deplete them too hard. I wouldn't drop their carbs too low. And then the last 3 days, ideally I would like to carb them up, but I would go back to the diet. Were they able, if I ever tried to introduce carbs, would they look better, or would they look better and a lot waterier? Or would they look fuller and just end up holding a lot of water? So it depends on the person really, but ultimately everyone's going to use and probably should use some form of depleting where the carbs are really low for 3 days and then loading where they go back up for 3 days. It's like I said, it's tried and true, but it's social media days and people go wacky, and they see so-and-so carbing up on this, and they say, maybe I need to carb up on that. Or, they see someone eating like crazy and they say, maybe I'm going to, if I don't eat that, I'm going to be flat. So goes back to mindset again. People, people get caught up in what other people are doing.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on cheat meals? Do you think they're important? How do you factor them in, or do you think it's just an excuse for people to go hog wild?
I think it's mostly excuse for people to eat. I think it's people get hungry and they say, "I need to cheat because I'm hungry." I think they're people are far less people seem to be doing them a lot, and I know people who I just I kind of help a lot of people this year, and I didn't have people doing a lot of cheat meals. I mean, some I did with really good metabolisms, but most I didn't. And some people would like email me, "What about cheat meal?" I don't even respond. You know what I mean? Like, I did it for a show, then they get it after a while. Instead of emailing this, "Well, everybody say you can't read it yet. Let me text them. What do you think about a cheat meal?" Like, not responding. Someone was getting ready for a show, which he won, and he said, my anniversary is coming up, and I didn't respond because I knew what that was being set up for, right? Cheat meal. And he said, then he texted me and said, "Hey, Chris, my wedding anniversary is coming up." I said, "I don't care." And he said, "You don't care about my anniversary or a cheat meal?" I said, "Really, actually, either." I'm not really concerned. I mean, you know what? I just had someone do a cheat meal because they're just like in shape and lean. And that's when they're, there's not much harm to them. But this idea of like, I get 20 pounds of fat to lose and having cheat meals is going to help me get there quicker or faster.
Yeah.
I don't really buy into that.
Do you ever sometimes use simple sugars, a soda or something like that to help kind of refill somebody that's in shape? Or do you sometimes, I know sometimes some coaches will say like, "Oh, you need to eat like cake, or you need to eat like a burger," or like, do you employ some things like that, or that's not really your style?
Well, yeah, sometimes what I'll do is instead of letting them, a lot of times instead of having people like have their like carbs go way up and have like a cheat meal, I'll say, "You know what, you can work into your diet instead of, the 225 carbs you're eating now, you can get them for the next couple of days from anything." Calories are still pretty low. The quote, the insulin response is higher because you're eating crappier carbs, and so I don't really care. But the calories still don't go crazy high.
How about sodium? Because like back in I used to hear a lot that a lot of coaches would just be like, when their athletes would make meals, they wouldn't let them use salt. They would only be allowed to use seasoning. Nowadays, I hear of more individuals like, yeah, you can just have as much sodium as you want as long as you keep it consistent throughout your whole prep. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that people, I think people eat way too much sodium, and it's weird. I think people drink too much water and eat too much sodium. But just because it's like, I asked somebody, it's funny because I micromanage, but I don't. And a lot of times I'll tell people like, "Oh yeah, we got 3 weeks out. By the way, how much water are you drinking?" And sometimes people give me these numbers that are insane. I'm like, "Why?"
5 gallons.
Yeah. They give you crazy numbers. Or I'll say, "How much salt you got in your diet?" And the guy's like, "Well, I put like, 14 cranks of salt on each meal." I'm like, "Each meal?" But it's relative. So if the guy's eating like 14 cranks, which is insane and stupid, now if he listens to the show, he'll know exactly what it is because that's his word, cranks, and 14 is his number. And he'll go, obviously if he cuts down to 3 cranks per meal, that's a big sodium deficit the last week. So he'd never be able to cut it out because he'd probably cramp up and go, to the hospital, just by reducing his own sodium down to nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I wouldn't say he'd cramp up and go to the hospital, but if he added like a diuretic to it, he definitely would. So versus someone who's just, putting a little bit of salt, on 3 or 4 meals, a little bit, they may have to go really low sodium the last week, to squeeze out the last amount of water, but it's relative, right? It's like some guy who's making $100,000 a year and then he's, making $40,000. His lifestyle is just torched.
Yeah.
Versus somebody making, $15,000 a year going down to $8,000 is still half cut. But I mean, the guy making, with the bigger income, even though his is cut in half, his lifestyle is completely upside down.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the person who's like, 14 cranks down to 3 cranks. It's still a lot of 4 cranks a meal. Still a lot of salt, but his body's, the way it reacts, because there's such a differential between the peak in the amount of sodium to the reduction. That is as extreme as the guy who's just using salt a little bit here and there to like none.
How do you handle a quote like a refeed day or refeed meal?
How do I what it?
Like is there like a certain protocol? Because I know you mentioned that you'll still keep people within like the calorie range.
Calories, yeah.
And I'm just curious because again, this is something I'd never experienced. But Mark was like, "Yeah, you're gonna need to eat a little bit more tomorrow." But I was just curious, like, how do you handle those?
I mean, I'll have people do refeeds, and I'll have people eat a lot too, because I'm trying. But I was just trying to make the point that most people start refeeds way before they even need a refeed. It's like the guy you just hired for your, for your company, and he's worked, 40-hour week and he wants a vacation. It's like, dude, you put in, you don't need a vacation yet. You work 1 week, versus the guy who, think of that as the refeed. The time off from work, the time off from your diet. The guy who works 22 straight weeks or 14 straight weeks, hammering it for your, as your employee, he takes, quote, the refeed, the 1 week off, he goes on vacation, he comes back better than ever because he's, to work for you because he's refreshed. The metabolism's kind of the same, but people want to like take that week of vacation after working for one 40-hour work week. The same thing with the diet. They want to take they've been on a diet 6 days and say, okay, I need a refeed.
I want to ask you this because I'm really curious about this. In terms of the peaking, when you look at, I don't know if because you've worked with a lot of bodybuilders, but when you see a lot of like, I guess in the natural bodybuilding realm, you find that like a lot of coaches that deal with those guys, they don't deplete much water or sodium because they feel that if they are depleted, they actually look much smaller just because their muscle bellies are generally smaller. Does anything that enhanced guys take affect water? Like, is there like a more reason to do some sodium and water depletion on them versus on natural guys? Because when you see that on natural guys, they just look bad usually.
What do you mean they look
like
bad?
When a lot of natural guys are sodium and water depleted, they just like look flat and soft.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because you have to pound out the sodium and pound out out of the non-natural athlete, because the anabolics retain insane amounts of water.
Okay.
And cloud the appearance. So you can try to pound get rid of the water, and the reason the muscle looks better is because it's artificially inflated with anabolics.
Okay.
Whereas the natural guy, pull the sodium out of him and try to pull water out of him, it just leads to like a flat, stringy look.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, because you hear them trying to do the same things and it just doesn't work. Like, you just explained why. Okay.
Are you a fan of carb cycling? And if so, like, how do you implement that?
I am. I like to, I don't use it a lot, because the way I do things is like so instinctual that it probably includes a lot of carb cycling, just I'm not aware of it. But if someone said, hey, put together a diet for me, I'd probably keep them on like, 3 days like low carbs, a couple of days like medium carbs, and 1 day, it wouldn't be a refeed, but it'd be like higher carb, and then rerun it through. I think it allows people to stay motivated for the diet better. I think it allows people the one day that's higher in carbs. It does allow their metabolism not to speed up, but prevent it from crashing. I think that ultimately that type of diet versus a standard diet that's typically around the same calories but lower in same calorie level generally, I think you see better results from cycling your carbs.
You just get something to look forward to, right? I mean, you have that, you're just like, oh man, on Wednesday I get to eat more. That's going to be fun.
Yeah, I mean, usually the day after, you can train better after that day too, so you can expend more. It's always about expenditure and reduction. How much can you expend and how much can you reduce? And you'll find people with who train really hard don't have to do much cardio because they're expending a lot. You know what I mean? Or their carbs don't have to go, not always, but as low because they're expending a lot. I mean, so if carbs, think of calories, because when you reduce carbs, you reduce calories. When your carbs are low, your calories are low. But if you're having days where you are eating more carbs, maybe most people probably train harder the day or 2 days after, and they'll be able to expend more and ultimately get leaner.
On that talk of like cardio, when you were talking about it earlier, you mentioned like some guys do way too much cardio, and you like them to get their deficit from their diet. I think that's what you were mentioning. But so that people can understand, in your opinion, what does too much cardio look like, and what does like a normal amount of cardio look like? I know it varies from person to person. It's not a blanket statement, but what's that look like?
Too much cardio on your body looks like you're leaner, but only in certain body parts. That's what too much cardio looks like. You get leaner, but only in certain body parts.
Yeah.
It's like your fat still wants to hang around. So not that everyone gets uniformly lean, right? Mm-hmm. We all have areas that are slow to burn off, but, and then also too much cardio looks like in the gym that you can't get a pump, or your strength suffers, or you're moving the weights with like far less aggression than you could previously.
Yeah.
So the litmus test for each individual is, am I my workout suffering? My only question all the way through contest prep with people is, how's your workouts? I don't need to know the detail. Give me the detail. I said, no, that's not what I mean. I said, you got a good pump? Yeah, I got a good pump. Okay, I don't need to know anymore. Or, I don't have a good pump. Well, is your strength still there? Yeah, my strength's still there. Okay, that's all I need to know. And that would allow me in my mind to be able to say, okay, then we can push cardio. You can do more cardio. And then if it gets to the point of like, terrible workout. Well, what's terrible? No pump, no strength. Okay, either cardio's too much or the diet's too hard.
Do you think this is partially because like because I see a lot of people taking like short preps. Is that a consequence of that? Like they try to stack a lot of cardio and a lot of dieting into a short period of time?
Yeah. People like to prep short because it's hard to think long term. That's the reason people like to prep short, is because it's hard to think long term, and it's hard to do things consistently long term. It's hard to get an employee to work hard for you for a long period of time. Anyone can work hard for you for 5 weeks and then say, what happened to John Smith? He was working for you. What happened to him? He was great for the first 5 weeks, and he got lazy. So it's the same thing with contest prep. It's hard to do it for a long period of time. And I know people who work with me, they want to do short preps. Why? They want magic, or they want like me to grind them down to the ground. But I would much rather, I would suggest longer prep for everybody, because it allows you to adjust to mistakes that you might make, and everyone's going to make mistakes in their prep, or uncertainties that, pop up in the prep where, gosh, last year I was getting leaner a lot faster than this year. Well, good thing you decided to prep a longer period of time, because, things aren't coming together as you expected.
Yeah.
I like what you're saying about the workouts. I think that's something that we undersell ourselves. People will sometimes talk about how you can't out train a bad diet, and we should be smart enough to know that that's true. Like you're gonna, you can out eat any training effects that you have, right? But it is important that you feel awesome every single time that you work out and that your workouts are productive. And if they're not, then you do have to start to analyze like why, like what's making them bad. Am I not eating enough? Am I not well rested enough? Am I doing too much cardio? And then I think we also don't understand, how quickly that can turn bad. You can overtrain and then end up having cravings and feeling tired. And like, there's just so many things that can happen based off those workouts. So I think that's a really critical point is you got to keep the workouts. You have to have good workouts. And then a question I have about bodybuilding in particular, how important is it to get a pump and how important is it to try to maintain a pump throughout a workout in your opinion?
Well, I think strength is important, right? If you're maintaining your strength, but also and maintaining a pump. I mean, pump is feedback that your body's responding to what you're doing. I'm not, it's blood flow, blah, blah, blah. I mean, if you try to like articulate what is a pump, it's blood flow, it's blah, 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 it's building the muscle, but why? Why is it there? What I can tell you, the only thing I know about a pump with certain is it's feedback that something's good happening, right? And you can't get one when you're over dieting and overtraining. And if the pump is intuitively, if it's like the crack for bodybuilder. There's nothing but what is better than the ultimate wacky crazy pump? I mean, just think of your best pumps in the gym. I mean, right?
Yeah.
If you could get the craziest pump on, if you did 10 o'clock in the morning, if you did chest and you had the craziest pump, and you knew it was only from one hammer strength machine that you got at that, you do that. You'd go back to that. You'd drive 3 hours every day to do chest at that, right?
Yep.
Would you not drive 3 hours every single day if you could guarantee the craziest ultimate pump?
Yeah.
So it's something that it's like the ultimate feedback for something good's happening. So usually, over dieting, over training, blah, 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 over cardio, kills that. So that's why I always ask people, because I'm not there, I'm not training with them, right? I don't even go see the people I work with. It's even in the biggest level shows, I just ask them, how's the pump? And if people tell me like 4 weeks out, insane, I'm like, okay, then we're onto something because you're looking better anyway. You're looking leaner. But if they tell me like, oh, it's terrible. Well, how about yesterday? They say like, oh, it's terrible too. Then I know I'm pushing them too hard with the diet, or they're overtraining, or they just got in a rut, and cumulatively they haven't taken enough days off, and something's got to happen with either the diet, the training, the rest, to get to the point where at least you got a good pump.
Yeah.
Because then you're that's feedback to your body that something good's happening.
Mm-hmm. When we're mentioning overtraining and like dieting too hard, I've always wondered, when you see bodybuilders doing show to show to show every single year, and they have a short off season, back to prepping show to show to show, do you ever think that there's a point that they could be competing too much, that if they took like a prolonged, I don't know, year and a half off season to just gain, that they'd be able to make more progress than competing every year? Or is it just the nature of the sport that you need to compete every single year?
Yeah, it's you need more. I mean, it'd be like an army going from battle to battle to battle. They'd be just worn by the fourth one, even if they're the best army on earth, right? So it's I mean, you need an off season to allow your body to get to the point where it's just ready to drag it back down. Because the whole point in getting ready for a show is you're dragging your body down a cliff. You can make it, somewhat comfortable. You can make it, and try to do things where, so your metabolism doesn't slow. You can do high days. You can do intermittent. You can do the refeeds. You can take. Ultimately, you're dragging yourself down the cliff. And to get down there, you have to be like ready to do it. You got to be mentally ready, but you also have to be physically ready. So doing multiple shows, it's always difficult for people. it's an on paper thing. Whenever people say, I'm doing 5 shows this year, I'm so motivated. I'm like, yeah, right. By the 5th show, you'll be like burnt.
Yeah. Okay.
Dragging yourself down a cliff. That is a puts a great picture in your head. Yeah. It's like, how many branches do you want to hit on the way down, and how many rocks do you want to split you open, on your way down the cliff?
Yeah.
It's not fun. I have people tell me all the time, I don't respond. Like when they say, I'm dead tired,
You don't respond.
I don't respond to like, I'm hungry, I'm dead tired, I need a cheat meal. I don't respond to any of those.
Oh man, no, that's good. Just ignore it, I guess. But I guess it's just the mentality, because like, when talking to you about all of this, is like, you make it is tough, and I guess like whenever you're always trying to find a way to make it easier, I think like Mark and yourself said, it's just not going to be fucking easy, and that's just what you have to deal with.
Yeah, it's not easy. I mean, it is not easy, and it's funny when I meet people and they say, can you work with me? And they say, I'm ready to work. I'm thinking, does that really need to be said? I mean, if you want to be your best, not only Mr. Olympia, but just your absolute best, you better be ready to work. And that's what it takes to get into great shape. It's, or to be a great bodybuilder on any level. It's a lot of work and a lot of consistency.
We get any help from supplements or vitamins? You do utilize protein shakes or anything like that with some people you work with?
I use protein shakes. I don't use too many. I don't use too many. I don't use too much protein powders. I do a lot with food. I am a big believer in multivitamins, generally sports supplements, all the stuff. They're not going to make or break you. You know what I mean? They're not going to put it this way. Oh, how do you feel? I haven't got a pump for 2 days. Well, that's because you take your multivitamins, multiminerals, zinc, glutathione, branched-chain amino acids. It's a combination of many things that lead to that. That said, traditional nutritional supplements that are available do play a role in your recovery and keeping your immune system probably more than anything else strong.
It's not going to recovery, and it's most likely not going to hurt anything.
No, it's when I was in college, I had the one side of the wall was completely filled, looked like a store with all the supplements I used to take.
What about like creatine?
Tremendous product. I think that's a must-have.
Of course.
Yes. It's a product you can take today and feel tomorrow.
Nice. Even when shredding down, you still recommend people take it?
People always say, holding water. It's like, dude, come on.
I had to ask. I just had to ask.
I'm happy you asked.
Most people tell me they hold water. I say, dude, you're still fat.
Yeah, you're like, that's the problem. You're just still chubby. And then in terms of the protein shakes, like just, I don't know, what somebody has one once a day or a couple times a week, something like that.
Yeah, people use them like after they train.
Right.
I'm still trying to figure out the whole gut problem, right? The GH, the whey protein, you know. So I'm trying to like, and I'm still trying to figure out in my own head, like, really, is 8 ounces of ground beef, which one's better, 8 ounces of ground beef or 2 scoops of whey protein?
Right.
My instincts say the ground beef.
Right.
On the note, I don't know, when you mentioned gut problem, if you meant actual stomach problems or the bodybuilding gut problem that you see a lot these days.
All of it. All of it. People always telling me, people who aren't using GH, my stomach's all screwed up. I hear that so often, and I come back to like protein powders. I don't know, people using too many protein powders, the whole idea of that much protein in a concentrate that you can mix up and put in this like little cup and drink it down. That's 60 grams of protein. That's a lot. Like, just flying through your small intestines quickly, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, and it would take you, how long to chew on 60 grams
that's
of
what I
protein?
mean.
It'd take you a while, right? Like, and you
I
get
don't
to
know if it was
just
meant to be.
Yeah, you just get to sip it down. Yeah, and you can look at that like through any liquid, right? Orange juice or anything else. I mean, it's kind of all ends up being similar. I love the way you're simplifying everything. To people listening, some people might be like, "Man, this guy's just kind of like making everything seem so simple," but it is fairly simple. I mean, nutrition has always been simple. I try to share this with people all the time. Nothing has changed. You still have to work really hard. If you want to have a good body, then maybe you put some time into it. But if you want to have a great body, that's a full-time job. It's a large requirement, and you're going to need a lot of help and a lot of assistance from either somebody like yourself, or you get the outside resources really to try to manage having a great body. Who is your favorite bodybuilder of all time? Like, do you have an inspiration that drove you to even start bodybuilding?
Well, it's funny. I liked Tom Platz when I was growing up because he had big legs. I had big legs. But I just realized this the other day is because someone else had read the same book. I read when I was a kid. I read Arnold's Education of a Bodybuilder, and I bought the book somewhere like at a garage sale. And I was like, "Wow, I'm doing weightlifting and bodybuilding." So I bought the book, and ran home to read it. And I thought it was going to be like, okay, like Mondays you do chest, right? Tuesdays you do back. And I'm reading the book, and it's like, I mean, it's Anthony Robbins before Anthony Robbins was Anthony Robbins. In other words, it talked about your mental game. And I was like in the 7th grade, and nobody ever told me before about being mentally positive. I mean, I didn't know what that meant, when you're 13 years old, and I didn't know what like setting goals meant. I mean, maybe this day and age, people, set goals for their kids and or try to instill in them that there are options. That was the first time I ever read something and realized, oh, there's options in things. And Arnold kind of spelled that out. And yet he didn't really, I mean, he was talking way above and beyond, weight training. And so that was a huge influence on me because I was expecting to find out something to read in that book about physically improving yourself, and it was mentally improving yourself, which, as you're a 13-year-old kid, you didn't even know what's that all about. So, even though I thought he had a killer physique, of course, like everyone else, I think Arnold became someone to copy. You know what I mean? To steal his ideas, emulate, whatever you want to call it, in terms of, what, how your perspective on life.
Cool.
So, I mean, because everyone's physiques you can fall in love with, when you're a kid and you're looking at magazines, every single magazine you open up, you're like, wow, they're all mind blowing to you. Right. So, I mean, pick any of them. You could admire all of them.
And greatest bodybuilder of all time, in your opinion?
I think the greatest bodybuilder is Arnold, because people have this stupid idea. They say, well, he wouldn't get 10th in the Olympia. It's called groundbreaker.
All right.
I mean, he broke ground for everyone else. He broke ground for, I mean, his level of development in 73 probably would have, his 73 look would have won did win in 74. 73, 74, 75. That look would have won, would have killed everyone in 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82. It wasn't until Samir strung it together in 83 and then Lee Haney in 84. So for a decade, he was ahead of his game. And when people caught up with him, I mean, he had to figure out all this stuff on his own. At that point, people who came after him could model and steal the ideas that he had laid down. You know what I mean? I mean, when you're, people will take Elon Musk's car 20 years from now and they'll look back at the Old Testament and say, what a joke. It's a piece of junk. Or they'll look at the iPhone now and say, look at the iPhone 1, it was pathetic. Or a BlackBerry. Yeah, but BlackBerry was the first smartphone. They broke ground. So that's why, I think Arnold #1, and the fact that he stuck around and has stuck around and supported the sport when he didn't need to. He was right. He was the #1 box office guy for a long, long, long time, and still putting on the Arnold Classic. So nobody's going to do stuff like that.
How have you taken some of these principles of hard work and dedication to bodybuilding, you being a former bodybuilder yourself, and then instilling some of these lessons into, a Jay Cutler and some of these other guys? Have you been able to take that outside of the gym and utilize it in your own life?
Yeah, I think in terms of, I think you can borrow. I mean, bodybuilding's not easy, and it takes a remarkable amount of hard work, and you have to live it 24 hours a day if you want to be good at it. So, I think business is easy compared to bodybuilding. So I've been able to take the principles of discipline, hard work, goal setting, vision, and apply it to business, mostly because I knew business is, it's not all encompassing. You get time off. In bodybuilding, you get no time off. It's always like off season into preseason, You eat 3 days out, one bad meal, you're doomed. You know what I mean? You can sign a contract in business and it has a little clause in it. If anything in this contract screwed up, you get to go back and start all over again. You know what I mean? Your lawyers have a thing in there. If we screwed it up totally, we have the right to go back and redo it all over again. Yeah. It's like, oh, sorry, I screwed up prejudge and I get to go back in 3 days, redo my prep week, what's it called, peak week. So I think by comparison, bodybuilding is still like remarkably demanding, remarkably hard. I always tell people, God, if you put the time and effort into something outside of bodybuilding that you do into bodybuilding, you're going to be successful.
And then you mentioned how Arnold had an impact on you at a young age, and you were unaware that stuff like that even existed, having a positive mindset. Is this something that you share with your own children?
Yeah, I share with my kids options. I give them options. Do you want to? They were homeschooled, or would you like to be homeschooled? Here's what homeschooling is, and now they're not homeschooled. And now that they're in public school, I said there's options. You don't have to go to the same public school, every year. You can go to, different public schools. You want to go to private school? Let's go look at a private school. There's, I'm always, it's funny because a lot of kids grow up in, if you grow up in poverty, there are no options actually. I mean, there's fewer options. And if you grew up in, in a disenfranchised community, there's less options. And it's just a simple, it's a simple idea that, options are available to us. In the profession that I do in real estate or something, I'll often say to someone when they say, this is, we got an emergency and this is what we're doing. I say, well, what else can we do? And there's nothing else we can do. There's got to be something else to do. People have their hearts up. The people going for operations and the doctor gives them 5 different things that they can do.
Yeah.
What are our options right now? We're in an emergency situation. What other things can we do? Or what are the, and what are the results of those possible things? So I think if you, I think being successful, or I hate that word successful, but broadening your horizons by always believing that there are alternatives or options to what you're doing now, and there might be a better way of doing things, including contest prep, is a good way to go.
I think that's great. A great thing to share with children is because, as a kid, your mind is always so blown when you hear that somebody else is doing something. You just might not be aware. I remember my nephew. He was so excited when he could count to 10. And he came to me, he was like, Uncle Mark. He's like, I can count to 10. And I said, what about 11? And you should have seen his eyes just like lit up. Like, I don't know. Yeah. Like, I don't know nothing about no 11. Like, what are you talking about, dude? Yeah. I just got to 10. Give me, cut me some slack here. But it's great to let kids know, there are other options. You don't have to eat junk food. I mean, you can. There's some wonderful options in terms of junk food, but there's healthy food that tastes pretty good too. So that, you could give them options and then see which way they want to go with it.
Yeah, no, I can't agree with you more. I mean, you hope with kids that, and anything that decisions that they make good decisions. But you always want to. It just I get stuck on the idea of options only because, like, at that, we could go back to the Arnold book, Education of a Bodybuilder, and I mean, I went through, just my environment that I grew up in. I didn't know that there's options on the table, like even the idea of options. You just were told what to do, and there's nothing wrong with that, to be told what you do too, because there's a discipline in it. But the idea of, like, there are options for you to do in life. You don't have to live where you live. There are options, on so many different levels. And, with that in mind, it allows you to keep an open mind. And I think an open mind allows you to create for yourself, ultimately, possibly a more comfortable lifestyle, or a more comfortable life, or one with less stress and duress, and one where you're living it rather than just life is like crashing down on you.
On this note of, like, we're talking about all these options here, when you looked at, like, or when you see the evolution of bodybuilding and you see where classic physique is now a thing, it's more, classic physique is meant to, I guess, emulate the Arnold era when physiques looked like that. How do you feel about classic physique? Do you like the way that category looks versus bodybuilding, or do you look at it as two different things, or do you just look at it as bodybuilding?
I look at it as two different looks. It's bodybuilding, and I love it. And it's unfortunate that we got to the place where we had to create it, or it had to manifest itself from the what had been rewarded as winners to professional bodybuilding shows. We all love mass, right? I mean, everyone loves muscle mass, but and the more is better until it doesn't look better. And I think that's what happened to the sport is it just took a turn where all the physiques looked the same, or there was less distinction from physique to physique, and where there was no room for somebody with a killer physique. Just there's no room for that body, because he would ultimately get beat by somebody who might have an ugly big body. I mean, I'm in real estate. There's big houses and there's ugly big houses. And how much house do you need when you have the perfect? I can show you houses that are just mind blowing, that are 100 years old. They might have been remodeled a little bit. They're 100 years old. They're brick. Yes, they've been remodeled on the inside. They're 2,300 square feet. They're made of, their craftsmen put them together with thought into each and every nook and cranny in that house. And that house would blow your mind over some 4,200 square foot house that somebody just put together in 6 weeks, in a suburb 19 miles away from this house. So the point is, there's bigger is not always better. And I think that that's what happened with the sport. It went, took an odd turn, and it so much so that here we are with classic physique. And there's a lot of classic bodybuilders I look at and say, now that's bodybuilding. And do they weigh a lot? No. Are they gigantic? No, but they're put together perfectly right.
Yeah.
And it kills me when someone say, yeah, he'd be incredible if he gained 20 pounds. Well, he might gain 20 pounds, but 5 of it might go in the wrong spot. And they'll say, you know what? He was actually a little bit better about 14 pounds ago.
Yeah. How about guys like, I guess, Cedric McMillan, Sean Roden, who you worked with or who you're working with? They, like, in terms of, I guess, the flow of their physique, even if they were bigger or smaller, they still seem fairly classic-ish, if you get what I'm saying. Am I wrong in saying that?
Yeah, they're classic-ish. I mean, they're more classic, in 2012 than they are in 2019.
Yeah.
But there's a, someone said, well, how do you define classic? I said, it's critical of somebody in the classic Olympia placing high. I said, just because he's muscular and has the height and weight dimensions that meet the, I said, classic when you see it. It's like you go into an old classic home and you say, wow, someone who's grown up their whole entire life in a city that's not too, in Las Vegas, you know what I mean? Like Vegas, they might come back to Boston and see a brownstone of it, it's, wow, how'd they do this? It's, well, we don't even know how they do it anymore. They couldn't do it. They couldn't do this anymore. So, there's a, classic when you see it, and there's some people in the open with more classic lines, Sean and Cedric, than or even Brandon Curry than others. Just pure mass monsters. And there's nothing wrong with, Rolly Winkler at all, pure mass monster, or of course, Ramy. But I'm not going to name names, but people won big shows in the last 6 years who look like shit. And that should have never happened.
Yeah.
So, and the idea that the whole point that it went down the wrong, turnpike turnoff is that, you had a classic pro show this weekend with 40 guys in it. You couldn't have a pro show with 40 guys in it. You could have we're having a men's open pro show. You're going to get 40 guys? No, you're not. Why? Because people have decided that's not the look that I want for myself. And so the growth in the sport is, and I said this from the second classic started. I told Dave Palumbo on our podcast, I said, and he laughed. I said, I think in, 5 years, we're going to be talking about the classic Olympia, or 7 years, definitely 10. And we might not even give two craps about the Open Olympia. And that's where, I will guarantee you there'll be as equal as excitement in the Classic Olympia this year as there is in the Men's Open. It might have been this year. It might have been equally, amongst purists, equal excitement about the Classic division as there was about the Open, especially with the big names missing in the Open.
No, that makes, not saying that, like, when people look at that, or even I look at that, classic versus like bodybuilding, even myself, like, I just like the classic physiques better. Like if I were to ever want to do that, not saying I could, but I would much rather like look like a classic physique bodybuilder than a bodybuilder. And I'm not saying I can or anything, you know what I mean? Yeah. But that's, you're exactly right about that.
I mean, it's taste, right? Personal preference. But generally there's there's a lot to see in a classic physique. There's just, you can draw your eye in on every pose. And that's how you know when you have a complete physique, when every single pose looks off the hook. You can look impressive. There's a lot of people in the Open Olympia are damn impressive in every single pose. But for their bodies to look off the hook on every single, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Not only the poses, but just the movement into the poses, then it's classic.
Yeah.
Chris, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. This was incredible. Thanks for sharing all that information with us.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much. Let's do it again.
All right. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Wow.
That dude's smart, man.
Yeah. Yeah, he is.
My stomach was trying to get on the broadcast. I don't know.
I was laughing, bro. I heard that shit.
Yeah. I was wondering if mine got on
I think
mic too.
I think somebody else may have too, or it might have been outside. They might have been shooting their, the police thing over there or whatever. I heard something making noise in the background.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe it was yours that was so loud that it was going into
mine was going crazy for like 30 seconds.
Dude, yeah. I couldn't even ignore it.
Like making weird noises,
That's just you're burning fat.
Yeah. Exactly. Fat burning stages.
That was so reassuring because, over the past, like since before this week, I would say maybe a week and a half, like I wasn't waking up hungry. I just wasn't even hungry, period.
Mm-hmm. I think all people got out of that podcast was no cardio and and more machines. Like, whoops, wrote down stuff the wrong way.
Like that's what he said. But
being hungry, I think, is a good sign.
Yeah, and then so now we cut down my macros a little bit, and I've been waking up a little hungrier than normal, and I think I've made a pretty good amount of progress over the past couple of days.
I also think though there's people that there's a lot of people that like you came from a place of already eating pretty good, but there's some people that when they come from a spot where they're eating very irresponsibly, mm-hmm. they actually might find the food to be like hard to eat. Like sometimes you struggle with like the amount of food. Because now you're starting to not only have the micronutrient content, but you're also getting the macronutrient content your body actually needs, and you're just feeling more full all the time. Mm-hmm. You're feeling better. And yes, if you're trying to get like lean, and really trying to have some crazy progress, then you're probably going to have to be hungry. But that can also come down kind of slowly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I love how he just didn't waver on anything. Like it was like, what do you think of intermittent fasting? Yeah, like it sounds like it can probably work. He didn't say that keto doesn't work. He didn't say that no carb doesn't work, but he just implements what works. And it's like, oh, the person's getting leaner. Oh, they got too skinny. Oh, let's give him a little bit more food, And it was so basic and almost so nonchalant. You're like, I don't even know if I learned anything from that. But what you learned is that the basics work.
Yeah, I mean, you asked him on two different occasions, like, has anything changed? And it's like, nah, nothing's changed.
Right.
Whether the diet or the training, right? So, just confirm more of what most people kind of already know, but now this just cements it a little bit better.
Yeah, and some people might be wondering, like, why we didn't ask him about, a lot about steroids. Is like he would just throw out the same basic stuff. There's nothing new. There's people take testosterone and other things to get ready for a show. And he also is a guy that one thing that we didn't really cover, he did talk a little bit about how he might carb cycle people, but he'll audible a lot, just the way a lot of contest prep coaches will. He'll make adjustments a lot. Like he might say, oh, okay, well, you need to do cardio over the next 3 days for 30 minutes, and he might pull it back out or need new pictures or whatever, and then he might bring your carbs back up or bring your carbs back down. He's going to adjust on the fly, and I'm sure they probably do similar things with some of the drug protocols, but you're not really going to gain a lot out of that because that's going to be so uniquely different for each person. So
I hope people really like with what he was saying about some of these higher level bodybuilders drug use. I hope people really pay attention to that and believe it, because like when you hear a lot of these guys on YouTube and see that shit, that like the amount that they're taking, people really think that's normal. Like that's not normal.
Yeah.
Like that is dangerous, the amount of like shit that these YouTubers are taking and barely making any progress, you know? He's right. These dudes aren't taking much shit.
People don't want to hear that.
They don't want to hear that. And I like how he's brutally honest about it too. Like, you won't be Mr. Olympia. No matter how much you do, you won't be.
Do you know how many powerlifters there are that are already on massive amounts of stuff? When somebody brings up Larry Wheels, someone's like, "Oh my God, dude, he's on massive amounts of shit," and you're like, "Well, you use stuff too," and it's crazy though. But that's the go-to thing, and it's like, well, I don't think that's the difference, but okay, whatever makes you feel good.
Yeah, it's literally it's whatever makes you feel happy, feel okay with it.
That makes you more comfortable with yourself, then go for it. You're right. That's the difference.
Yeah. But you know what really is funny, when we were talking about peak week, man, like when you if you ever were to go to like natural shows, I don't know, like you'll probably see this more now too, and ask like what's some of these guys did on peak week when they look horrible. They're like, yeah, I did all this depletion and all this stuff, and it just didn't seem to work out. But yeah, like he explained it. It makes sense. Yeah. I didn't realize that anabolics like make you hold so much water, but that is why they have to do that shit. If you're a natural guy that's doing a show, you shouldn't get rid of water. That's the one thing that's helping you be full. Keep that, you know?
It makes a large difference. I actually think a lot of times the natural guys can look a little leaner sometimes. They can look a little drier, and maybe that just has to do with like what he was saying, anabolics, kind of making you hold on to water and maybe just hold on to other nutrients, and maybe it's hard to get as dense. Obviously you can look a lot bigger, you can look a lot crazier. But like an Alberto Nunez, I mean, you don't really see like Alberto Nunez. Like one time when we were podcasting with him a few years ago, I mean, he had like striations in his jaw. And I'm like, I've never seen that. I don't know what's going on, but I was like, that looks crazy. Like whatever that shit is, it looks crazy.
Yeah, the condition of the high level natural dudes, it's really crazy. But the thing is, they don't do crazy stuff on their peak week. It's pretty much like if they're in shape, they just keep it all the same until showtime. It's not fancy at all.
Powerlifting is the same thing. People flip out the last few weeks before they get into a competition. They're like, oh man, like I shouldn't have bought a different belt. That 13 millimeter belt was so much better. Oh man, maybe I should put that back on. Oh wait, should I use a lever belt? Oh wait, I was squatting better a couple years ago in flats. Or they go back and watch an old video from like 6 years ago, and they're like, oh man, I was close to my max that I do now. Oh man, I should maybe switch. Oh, that other training program was better. Maybe I should go back to 3 sets of 3. Like you just doubt. For some reason, you start doubting everything. And normally, you got to try to keep your cool. If you do have a coach, just you probably paid them, so just believe in that and work on that, and trust in that. And then when the show is over, the competition's over, you can always reevaluate what he could have done better.
Yeah.
But there's this saying that says, the time to learn how to run is not when you're being chased by a lion. So like when you're going full blast in a competition, that's not the time to really switch things up, man. Just hold steady and try to stay on that program the best you can.
Yep.
Yeah. I've been still peeing like crazy.
Nice.
I don't have.
You tried hanging upside down?
No, that'd be a bad idea.
Oh,
because you guys know, the other side, the taint is like, it's got lockjaw, right? I can hold my poop in pretty good.
Your taint has lockjaw.
Yeah. Yesterday morning is, it's early, it's dark, I can't see, so I go by feel around the house. Like I kind of have an idea where I am. I'm like hurrying to the bathroom, like dude, this is gonna be a close one. So I normally feel, and I swing my right arm around to feel the bathroom door sill. Like it's just like boom, touch it, light on.
Yeah.
I go for the door sill, I miss, I take an awkward step, and I peed myself. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, am I an adult? What's
one small misstep,
and that was it.
What the hell?
I had to pee so bad.
I have to get you some diapers.
I think so. I'm like concerned.
That's so funny. Do some Kegels, bro. There's an app for that, you know? No,
There's
seriously.
an app for everything.
There's a Kegel app. It'll like count down and it'll,
His pelvic floor needs some help.
yeah.
Does it calculate how much like pressure you can hold in?
Yeah, actually, it's supposedly like it has a different programs building up from the basic program, so it gets more advanced. You hold for more seconds. Don't ask how I know. Just know that it does this.
The progression, right?
Yeah, it's progressive overload.
There it is. That's what it's all about.
Has there been anything weird that's changed in your diet in the last few weeks? Like everything's been kind of like not that much different than what you've done before, right?
Everything's the same. Yeah, the exact same. I mean, we did alter how much I am eating, but it's still it's chicken and rice.
Yeah,
that's it. And I don't have any I don't do any kind of like drinks of any kind other than sparkling water. I'm trying to think. I guess the newest thing that I implemented was like I'm having salsa with egg whites.
Ooh, salsa.
Yeah, a super awesome bodybuilding hack or shredding hack is get a Mexican girlfriend because they can make amazing homemade salsa, and it's insane. Like I don't feel like I'm on like any kind of like restrictions because I have just like a cup full of egg whites with salsa, and it's
salsa's good.
It's really good. Yeah. And then of course, like when I do make chicken, people, like, I can't do chicken, but I've been using Caribbean and like that chicken seasoning or chicken rub. Yeah, dude, it makes a world of a difference. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense. And then that, of course, with I will mix in once in a while the Redmond's seasonal. That stuff's really, really good. But all in all, dude, like, no, I haven't changed anything. Yeah.
Just, I mean, it could just be continuing to lose weight. Could be peeing some of it out, peeing out some of that body fat.
Yeah. I mean, I was crazy. So like when the Piedmontese people were here, like they had extra flat iron steaks, and I put that in my macros, and I'm like, I can't believe this is like more lean than like chicken. It was insane.
Yeah. So adding in that protein.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. I was like pretty far, not ridiculously far over, but I was over protein last night, and it was pretty awesome.
How many days do we have left until the unveiling?
I think only
11?
like 9 days.
9 days.
Yeah. This is what I've been doing like every so often. Let's say, how many days till Christmas?
You asking Siri or something?
Yeah, 9 days till then. Sorry, I thought I had the volume up.
I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, so I'll just ask Siri how many days till Christmas. And
yeah.
Siri just told me 9 days.
And you've been counting down with a little chocolate every morning?
No.
A little chocolate calendar.
I have seen those. My nephew got one, but no, I didn't. I don't have one.
I have no idea what you guys are talking about. I don't know what this thing is. Chocolate calendar? Wait, is this like a weird...
No, it's like a little kid thing.
Oh, okay.
It's like a countdown every day. They get one like piece of chocolate. It's
they just open it up every day.
It should be like a piece of jerky or something though.
A piece of meat.
Yeah,
it was awesome. Awesome having him on the show today, and it's so obvious on how he gets along so well with Jay Cutler. I mean, they seem like the same person almost.
They sound identical.
Yeah, man.
They seem very similar. Like it's just a no bullshit approach, and you got to work hard at it.
Man, his physique was amazing.
Yeah,
he was younger.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the impressive thing, right? When he's not just coaching it, not just talking about it. He actually went out there and he did it. Yeah, he looks awesome. Jay said he doesn't work out anymore though, so. Anyway, thanks to our sponsors. Really appreciate our peeps at Quest Nutrition. We got some of the donut bars just sitting right here on the table, but I think that
There's one more left.
there's only one more in there.
We have to keep it there so everybody can see it though. So
Quest also has, not only do they have a million different kinds of bars, a million different types, that you can kind of get all over the place. They're at 7-Eleven and everything. All, you can see them at the airport. Somebody was asking me the other day about like, how do you eat when you travel? I was like, the same. Like, it's not any harder, like, especially nowadays, like things have improved a lot. And there's great companies like Quest Nutrition. There's great products kind of all over the place. But the standard traditional Quest bars are fantastic. And then nowadays they got the Hero Bar, which we talk about that a lot. Those are damn good. Those are damn addicting. They have cookies. They have chips. They have pizza. So you're going to want to check out Quest Nutrition and what they have to offer. They also have protein powders that you can cook with and make up all kinds of different recipes with.
Head over to questnutrition.com at checkout. Enter promo code MarksQuest for 20% off your entire order.
Yeah, and that was cool having Piedmontese here for the seminar and then having them on the show. They explained a lot. I don't know much about meat other than I just love eating it. So it was great to hear them talk about their business and just how much they care about the company and how much they care about what they're putting out there. And we appreciate the hell out of them. They're always they're always good to us, and it's just a great company. If you want to try to get more protein in and you don't want the fat to go along with it, check out some of the Piedmontese steaks. And sitting on the table right here on our podcast, we got some of the beef jerky even.
Yeah, I've been getting a lot of DMs from guys that have been getting their beef, and it's just like, it's all good. Everyone's talking about how freaking good it is.
Yeah,
so,
across the board, all the cuts, they're just, the fat is lower in comparison to anything that's out there. It's amazing.
Yeah, and the conversation that we just had with Chris Aceto, I mean, he was saying how he utilizes some carbohydrates in people's diets, and it's higher or lower with people. And we always talk about how much protein you need. If you're going to overeat on anything, it would be the protein. And then the hardest thing to manage for most people is just the fat calories. And how do you have food that tastes good that doesn't contain large amounts of fat? Because like fast food restaurants and a lot of these other things, it's when we get the fat calories up along with the carbohydrates at the same time, we end up with delicious foods a lot of times. But Piedmontese steak tastes really good even without the extra calories.
Yeah, that's how you do it. You head over to Piedmontese.com. That's Piedmontese.com. Right now through the rest of the year, they're giving everybody 25% off the entire order. And if your order is $99 or more, you get free shipping. You don't need a special promo code this month, but if you want to support us, use the link in the YouTube description and the podcast show notes.
And I've been on this no carbs till Christmas kick since the 1st of November.
That's got to be tough, right?
Yeah, it's not easy, but when you got snacks, you can kind of bypass that. I'm not big on snacks. I try not to eat them too often, but sometimes at the end of the day, I'll reach for a perfect keto bar. I'm still in ketosis. I actually have the strips that you can pee on that they sell through Perfect Keto as well. You can go on their website and purchase them off of there. And I'm still in ketosis and have been for a little while now. So still feeling good, still feeling strong. Everything's coming together training-wise. Strength feels like it's actually coming back up now that my body weight has kind of leveled off. And I think it's because of the nutrition, and it's because of being motivated enough to kind of stay on the diet and keep with the diet, which is usually the hardest part for people. But a lot of the products over at Perfect Keto, I think they're not only going to help me, I think they'll help you. So check out some of the stuff from Perfect Keto. They have actual ketone products that you can put into some of your drinks, some of your coffee. The nootropic has ketones in it. They have protein powders that have MCT oil powder in there, and then we often will utilize the MCT oil powders in our coffees and things like that too, just to help enhance the flavor.
Yeah, I was just thinking the pea strips, I don't even need to make it all the way to the bathroom to use them.
Yep.
Anyway.
Just stick them down the front of your pants.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to buy some of those because I'm
I think I'm in ketosis more than I think I am, more than I expect. So I'm going to buy some of those after this.
Yeah. You guys got to check them out. Head over to perfectketo.com/powerproject. At checkout, enter promo code POWERPROJECT for 15% off your order.
And I think that's all the time we got. Where can people find it, Andrew?
Hit me up on Instagram at IamAndrewZ. And Nsima, where you at?
And Nsima Inyang on Instagram and YouTube.
Mr. Mark Bale.
At Mark Smelly Bell on Instagram and YouTube and Twitter. Strength is never weakness. Weakness is never strength. Catch y'all later. Bye.